Sunday's Elite Eight is not far away, and we have a chalky one with #1 Houston versus #2 Tennessee, and then #1 Auburn versus the #2 Spartans. Chris Williamson here with you as we bring in Adam Finkelstein, Tim Doyle, and Hunter Dickinson to look at Houston, Tennessee first. And Hunter, you know how physical and smart the Cougars are. You played them very close in two different games, right? One was in the high 80s, low 90s, the other one in the 60s, 50s. What makes them, or when you look at this game, what's going to be the biggest reason why they beat Tennessee based on your experience playing against them?
I think the biggest thing for Houston is going to have to, you got to out-physical them. And I think for Houston, a problem for Tennessee is they rank 242nd in defensive rebounding, and Houston ranks 9th in rebounding. And I think that'll be something that, Houston is not that great offensively, but like we always said, one of our coaches, Coach Dooley, who did our scouts for Houston, he said, the possession really starts when the ball goes up, and that's where they kill you is extra possessions. When we played them at Houston, they missed more shots than we took. And so that comes from offensive rebounds, from turnovers. That's where Houston's really great at, is getting those extra possessions so that, it's a numbers game. If you, shoot more shots than the other team, you have a greater chance to win. So that's where they're going to kill you.
That's the essence of Houston basketball right there. Offensive rebounds, defense forcing turnovers. They are all about winning the possession game. What is different this year about this Houston team is they are the best three-point shooting team in the country. They shoot 39.8%.
Just say 40%, please.
Yeah, round it out.
Stuff. I'm doing the nerd stuff. The nerd stuff. Here's the thing. The last time they were in the top 100 was 2018. They were 34th. This isn't just the best shooting team they've had. This is far and away the best shooting team they've had. That means they can beat you in different ways.
Yeah, and that's why they've been so hard to beat. Now for Tennessee, they are no Alabama in terms of offensive production, but they got some dogs on their team. Zakai Zeigler, I know you love him.
It's my guy.
Right, Chad Zanier, Jordan Gainey. They can score in a variety of ways. So, Hunter, I'll start with you. What's the biggest reason Tennessee can beat Houston?
You got to throw the first punch of your Tennessee. I always told my teammates, look, in this game, you're going to either hit or get hit. Like when the ball goes up, you either got to go block out your man with your forearm, or else they're going to come push you under the rim. So I think it's for Tennessee, you can't match their intensity. You got to surpass their intensity. And I think if you do that, Coach Self always said, bullies don't like tasting their own blood. And I think that's what you got to do with Houston.
Yeah, and for a guy like Zakai Zeigler, he just sets the tone. Last game, he was fantastic. Kentucky had beaten Tennessee twice. And he came out and he was like, no. Like, there was no weakness there. 18 points, 10 assists. He dominated the basketball. He makes teammates better. He's the ultimate leader. By the way, he's been around the block. He has the experience. And talk about being scared. When you're from the 516, which is called Strong Island, you're not scared of Houston or the bullies or blood or any of that stuff, okay? Zakai Zeigler has to set a tone. He's got to be able to handle those really physical players of Houston, and this is like a perfect matchup for him. He wants all this smoke. New York guards love playing in games like this, and I expect him to have an enormous effort.
He may not be the most talented, per se, guard in this game. He may not be the best long-term prospect, but he's the most reliable guard in this game. And if it gets close down the stretch, which it probably will because it's going to be a slower tempo game. By the way, Hunter, everything he says is not necessarily true. Houston's the 12th best offensive team in the country. Just, back pocket. But side note, Zakai, when it gets slow, Zakai is the guy who can manage the game. And I think he manages the game better than, and I know Uzan's great. He was my player of the game last night. And he's going to be an NBA player, but I think Zakai is the one who manages the game the best.
Yeah, he is very composed, and you just want to have that type of leader on your team, especially in the Elite Eight. Now, let's move on to the regional final in Atlanta. You got Auburn and Michigan State. And Hunter, there have been some times in this tournament where Auburn has looked shaky. They're not locked in, but they're still here, right? They've come out with a W each time. That's all that matters. So what's the biggest reason Auburn is going to defeat Tom Izzo and the Spartans?
I think for Auburn, you can't get bored. I think right now they're kind of getting a little bored out there. It seems like, they're being a little, like you said, a little shaky. And I think it's just not from being, it's from being not locked in. And I think for a team like, going against Michigan State, if you're not locked in, I think they'll take advantage of that. I think at times Michigan wasn't able to take advantage of Tennessee or of Auburn's mistakes. Auburn had a couple of lazy turnovers in that game, and Michigan really wasn't able to capitalize on that. I think if you're playing a Michigan State team who thrives in transition, those turnovers will be, really costly for you. So I think if you're Auburn, just don't get bored with it. Make sure you know that you're playing in an Elite Eight game, and just try to, out-talent them, because you are the more talented team. Try to out-talent Michigan.
Yeah, I'm going to just kind of build off that. They just have more offensive weapons. And, obviously Broom's the guy that everyone knows, talking about National of the Year conversations. But, when they were trailing in a game against Michigan, it was all the other guys. Tahad Pettiford made some amazing shots. Denver Jones, I thought, made the 2 biggest threes of the game, and then he had a layup. He had an 8-0 run by himself. So this is a team that has almost 6 players averaging in double figures. They have more offensive talent. The biggest thing with them, Adam, is can they control their emotions? They are an emotional team. When the emotions are going good, they go on 31-8 runs like Michigan. They open up the game and they blow out the Wolverines. When it's not going good, it can be rocky, and this is a team that last year lost to Yale. So I need the good Auburn to show up.
Yeah, and obviously I think you're talking about Chad Baker-Mazara. He's got to control his emotions. He's the tip of that spear, if you will. I'm going to say something. Matt Norlander on Ion College Basketball podcast last night made a really interesting point. He said that Ole Miss almost out Michigan State. They were the more physical team for the first half the other night. I think Auburn can do that as well, but I think Auburn's got more offensive firepower to back it up. So they've got an overlap of physicality and shot making, because it's not just about the big fella down low. We saw Tahad Pettiford go nuts. We saw Denver Jones go nuts. They can, again, beat you in different ways. So you got Broom down there, who is hugely physical. The other point, there is more contact being allowed in this NCAA tournament than we've seen in a long, long time. I think that plays to Auburn's favor. Add the shot making on top of that. I think that's the recipe how they win this one.
So that's the recipe for how they win. Now, Tom Izzo, he doesn't even have his most talented roster, but they play incredibly hard. They make life very difficult for opposing offenses. One of the best rebounding teams in the nation. Hunter, what's the biggest reason they could take down Auburn?
I think it's if Auburn, starts out sloppy. Coach Izzo team's always going to play super tough, super hard. So they got to get out in transition. When we played Michigan State at Michigan, the biggest thing for us was, in transition, the guards are always going to try to run behind the opposing team's bigs and almost set like, a mini ball screen on their guards. And so that's something that Auburn has to be aware of. In defensive transition, you can't just run with your back towards the ball. You got to turn and face the ball and be able to make sure that you're not setting a screen on your own guards.
I think their guards have to be key here. I don't think that Michigan State's bigs can outplay Auburn's bigs, so I think their guards have to outplay Auburn's guards. And for me, that starts with Jace Richardson. He's been up and down. He was 1 of 10 from the floor the other night in their second round game. And then last night, he was phenomenal, dynamic, really asserting himself as like what he is, which is the most talented guard on that roster. I think he's got to do more of that tomorrow. They've got to do some things to get him going too, not just play him out of the corner. They get him off the DHOs, or they get him off some pitches going downhill to his left hand. So let's face it, he doesn't go right very often. That's going to open things up. But it's not just him. They need the totality of their backcourt to really get going if they're going to have a chance.
Yeah, I just trust Michigan State more than I trust Auburn. And the reason why is they have like guys that have been through the wars at Michigan State. It's hard to find a team where you have multiple 3- and 4-year players within the program. Like, they have a culture. So even when they were trailing against Ole Miss, there's like a reliability because everyone understands their role. Finding teams that understand their role in college basketball, that's like next to impossible because the rosters are changing every year. And you got a guy that's averaging 18 somewhere, and he comes in, you're like, all right, bro, you got to average 11 here. He's like, I don't want to do that. Look at this squad and check out the seasons with Michigan State. I mean, 3 years now is like an eternity with someone. Jaden Aiken's 4 years. That's like, we never see that anymore. So that's huge because they have an amazing culture. This team embodies the old school Tom Izzo teams. Tough, physical, rebound. They do not have the talent. They don't have the scoring of Auburn. So I don't think they have to play perfect, but they got to get inside of Auburn's head and frustrate them for the entire 40 minutes. Michigan did it for 28 minutes, and then they fell apart. So Michigan State can win this game, but Auburn's much more talented.
So will this game be a one-possession score at the end of it, Tim?
I believe so.
Okay.
I think this is going to go down to the wire. Unless Auburn has one of those Auburn could win this game by 20. Michigan State can't. Michigan State, do you agree with that?
Yeah,
Like
100%.
They got to grind away at this game. And at this point in the year, this is when everyone gets tight. You don't see teams like out there loose. That's a rare thing. What happened with Alabama when they made all those threes. I think this game's going to be close.
I think, for Michigan State to win, it's got to be in like the 60s. I feel like a 61, 58, 57 type game. If it gets past, 70s, 80s, Auburn's going to win this game because they're the more talented team, and that's where they want to play. Michigan State wants to dirty up the game, make it ugly, make it a grinded game. That's what Izzo really likes. And I think for Auburn, you don't want that. You want it to be a high-paced game and try to get a lot of points in this game.
Do you know your record against Michigan State?
4-3.
Oh, let's go.
He was ready. He knows that. He knows that record. You ain't forgetting that. Adam, Hunter, Tim, we appreciate the time. As always, as the madness is here, don't miss a moment of the action.
I was happy he didn't say 0-7. That would have been embarrassing.
That would have been ugly. TNT and True TV. Download the March Madness Live app to watch every game, anywhere, anytime, live.